Okay, members, we now move on to questions to the Minister for the Economy, and I call Daniel McCrossan. All right, that question has been withdrawn. I call John Blair.
Number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the member? I lost you there. Can I thank the member for his question? It is indeed a very important one, and one that's very close to my heart. I have argued many times that young people should not be the casualty of economic downturn, and providing them with a place in university is of the utmost importance. So thank you for your question. We have a responsibility to our young people. As I argued in August, if additional places in the associated funding is required within the higher education sector to honour pre-existing offers, then it is incumbent upon us as an executive to ensure that these are provided. As such, I have already secured agreement from the executive to do so, with £3.2 million being allocated for additional places. This is a significant investment in young people's lives. However, anticipating some of the difficulties that would happen this year, my department had already looked at the potential impact of COVID for the year 2020-21, creating additional demand for local places. Through the June monitoring round, an additional allocation of £1.5 million was also secured, which would deliver an increase of 5% funded places over 3 years. At the end of 3 years, the recurring commitment to maintain that 5% uplift will be £7.1 million. This will see an additional 1,232 places available within the local higher education sector, 410 of which are available also for this academic year. While we are still working with the universities to complete the process, Ulster University has already stated that it will not require further additional places. While Queen's is not yet in a position to formally confirm their additional numbers, current indications are that they are not as substantial as previously indicated. As a final point, I would note the wealth of higher education opportunities available at our further education colleges, where available courses offer outstanding education and opportunity for young people.
Thank you. And I'll call John Blair, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for the answer and the information given? Can I ask further to that reply, Mr. Speaker? Has the Minister identified any support that can be given to further educational colleges whose numbers and courses may be affected due to increase in university places where that is the case?
I understand exactly the question and the problem that's identified by the member. Indeed, I was up at the Northern College in the Newton Abbey campus a few days ago, looking at how young people are finishing their vocational courses and getting on with their career paths, and was really impressed by the standard of teaching and the interaction with those young people. There is no doubt that the additional places that will be created for universities, and actually on the other side of the coin, the additional places that will be created in sixth form colleges as a result of GCSE grade uplifts, will actually pose a challenge for our further education sector. And I will work with the sector to deal with that. We are still a couple of weeks away from knowing the full extent of that challenge, but I will be happy to report back to the House when we have those full figures. And of course, I'm immensely proud of our further education sector and look forward to working with them to ensure that no child is left behind.
I call Caoimhe Archibald.
Garamaga Concordia, and I thank the Minister for her answer so far. This will be a difficult and uncertain year for many students. Part-time jobs will be hard to come by, and at the end of the last academic year, the Minister and the Executive allocated additional funding to the Student Hardship Fund. Can I ask the Minister if she will consider doing so again this year to support students facing financial difficulties? Garamaga.
Thank you. As the member is aware, I had taken some fairly extensive steps to ensure that students were supported in their route through university, and particularly since many young students will not have the opportunity to have additional part-time work, etc. And that is why we have an additional £5.6 million in the system to deal with the issue of student hardship. And of course we will look at this throughout the year, monitor it and see that we can ensure that young people are able to stay on at our colleges and universities, because some of the money also went in that direction, and ensure that they find career pathways and profitable and genuine employment.
Thank you. And I call Jim Allister.
Last week, the Health Minister announced that Queen's University was making available 80 extra medical school places. Can the Minister tell the House, does that meet entirely the demand from those disappointed until their grades were upgraded, or is there any knock-on effect on next year, which would be most unfortunate for that upcoming cohort?
Can I thank the member for his question? But the issue of medical places is a matter for the Department of Health, which has the policy remit in this area and sets the numbers that are applicable for each course. So I would advise the member to speak to the Health Minister and get an indication from him as to how those numbers are progressing. In general, can I say that for courses that are very, very high demand, like medicine, nursing, midwifery, there will be potentially a difficulty there. I understand that the Health Minister has made a bid to the Finance Minister to satisfy those place numbers, and I'm sure he will update the member on the outcome of that bid.
And I call Mark Durgan.
Thank the Minister for her answers. Can the Minister, as the Minister with responsibility for further and higher education, explain why it has taken years, an extremely detailed business case and unprecedented lobbying to get the medical school at Magee eventually approved, and yet these extra medical places at Queen's in Belfast can be agreed without such a business case and apparently at the drop of a hat?
Well, of course, the member will know that we are in extraordinary and unprecedented times, and I apologise if those words are somewhat overworked in the current context, but we are in those extraordinary times. Young people this year did not have the opportunity to sit their exams, faced a period of great uncertainty. I'm glad that my colleague moved to take away that uncertainty, that the grades issue was sorted out, and that many of those young people will find placements in medical school in Northern Ireland. I really look forward to those young people completing their courses and contributing to our society here in Northern Ireland. The member will also be aware that we have been supportive of the graduate entry medical school at Magee, and that work is ongoing and will be ongoing, and I understand that we will be on course for an intake of students in September 2021.
I call Catherine Kelly.
Question 3, please.
Apologies, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the member for her question? The Executive has provided an unprecedented level of support to businesses since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The business support schemes introduced by my department on behalf of the Executive have provided around £340 million of support to over 32,000 businesses in Northern Ireland. This is in addition to the business rates relief from the Department of Finance, valued at over £300 million, and to a suite of other local support measures, including those introduced by local council. And I know it's not the member's direct constituency, but I was delighted to be in Mid-Ulster for the launch of their £1 million business support intervention scheme just the other week as well. And many working together where there is many levels of support for businesses. Indeed, in West Tyrone, claims to the UK Government's job retention scheme and the self-employed income support scheme together totalled over £50 million to that constituency. More widely, businesses throughout Northern Ireland have also received substantial support from the UK Government schemes, with almost 250,000 workers being furloughed and around 78,000 claims made to the self-employed income support scheme. I do acknowledge that not all businesses have received support to date, either through being ineligible for business support schemes or for the UK-wide schemes. Over the past 6 months, I have met with a wide range of business owners to hear their concerns for their business. I provided a paper to the Executive on the options to utilise available funds for our economic response and recovery. That included options for those that have currently not been able to avail of support thus far. It will therefore be up to the Executive as a whole, guided by the Finance Minister, to determine on the further distribution of any available resource.
Thank you.
However, just 1 second. However, I can assure members that my Executive colleagues and I remain committed to collectively agreeing further support measures as soon as possible, recognising that this is a very difficult time for many individuals and businesses, and but also recognising that some of those interventions would be best placed at a national level to be truly effective.
Do you need to remind the Minister that the questions should take no longer than 2 minutes? Thank you. I call Catherine Kelly for supplementary.
I thank the Minister for her answer. Minister, with many businesses and their workers struggling to cope with the economic fallout of COVID-19, the delays in reopening wet pubs has further increased the risk to jobs and business in that sector. Minister, can you confirm if you will actively look at and introduce a new support scheme for these businesses and their employees?
Again, I want to thank the member for her question, and you will know, and this House will know, that I have been extremely supportive of the opening of our tourism and hospitality sectors throughout Northern Ireland, indeed driving much of that process at the Executive level. I am on record as saying that it is regrettable that the traditional pubs have not yet been able to open. However, I note that we now have an indicative date of the 21st of September for the opening of those businesses, and we will work with Hospitality Ulster and the wider industry to ensure that the conditions are in place that those businesses can open. I again am on record as saying it's particularly unfair that one small section of a sector is held back. We now need to get on with opening up our economy. The best way to help business is to have business open and ready for business.
Okay, and I call Gordon Dunn.
Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her efforts to date. And we all do appreciate the significant support financially of £340 million that has gone out to businesses and which has been a real lifeline to so many. But can the Minister outline what further measures are available going forward to support and sustain, especially existing businesses, during this very tough time and the COVID crisis?
Can I thank the member for his question? And it is really indeed a very good question. We are undoubtedly seeing one of the toughest times for the economy in a very, very significant period. That downturn will be significant, and of course many of us fear, as we look towards October and the end of the furlough scheme, that there could be ramifications for employment of many people throughout our constituencies. So therefore it's really important that we get to a stage where we are continuing to announce and support schemes that will strategically support the economy and individual businesses to survive. I have made around 32 bids to the Minister for Finance, each of them in line with my published document, Building a Stronger Economy, to help aid recovery. Many of those bids are structural bids, looking at demand within the tourism and hospitality sector, trying to ensure that we help businesses to survive over what I think will be a very difficult period in the autumn. We have also made significant interventions in the economy in terms of skills. Very important that when we get to the stage where we are ripe for economic recovery, that we have the right skills to support the economy going forward. And that is why I announced the apprenticeship schemes around and with just over about 22 million of support for those schemes within the economy.
Thank you. And I call Stuart Dixon.
And thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. Minister, could you tell the House what engagement, if any, you've had with HMRC to assess whether your department can address the tax data issue for sole traders and those businesses that consider themselves and indeed are excluded from any of the schemes which you've so far provided?
And I thank the member for his question and also for facilitating the meeting with members of the group last Thursday. I think that it was a very important meeting. I always believe that it's much better to talk face to face than over social media. In terms of the HMRC data, I have written to HMRC requesting that we have access to the data that would help us to look at the necessary verifications that would be necessary for such a scheme. I also understand that the Finance Minister has also written to HMRC to try and ensure that this agreement is made between us so that we can look at how we progress with the issue.
I call Justin McNulty.
I welcome the news today, Minister, that Nicola Mallon will be stepping outside of her remit to provide support for the private coach and bus industries and the taxi industry. 6 months into this pandemic, why did it take so long for you to admit that you weren't willing or able to offer support to those industries?
Can I thank the member for his question? I think it's a really timely question. I'm delighted to be able to answer it. The Department of the Economy, if you look at the Audit Office report that was recently published, is next to health in the level of interventions and work that it has done to support the economy, way beyond anything that any other department, apart from health, and you would expect in a pandemic, a health pandemic, that would be the case. So the Department of the Economy has not been found wanting in reaching out to support those sectors of the economy that it can reach out to. However, ministers do have regulatory responsibility. And the Executive has, and the First and Deputy First Minister have made a decision that where that regulatory responsibility lies, that's where the responsibility should be for bringing forward those particular types of schemes. I welcome that these schemes will now be brought forward. It is a pity that the Minister for Infrastructure was a little bit late in coming to the decision that we would be able to do those schemes. Unlike other ministers across the Executive, including Education, who stepped in with childcare, including communities, that has been working with disadvantaged groups, working with the arts sectors and working with other sectors within their remit. It's important that ministers step up. I'm glad the First and Deputy First Minister have made the decision that they've made. I look forward to supporting the Minister for Infrastructure as she brings forward the schemes which are much needed.
Question 4 has been withdrawn, so I move on to 5. Sean Lynch.
Question 5.
Can I thank the member for his question? And with your permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to group question 5 and question 13 so that we can proceed with a range of the questions that are available to us today. Clearly, for those able to, working from home and the use of video conferencing has allowed many people to continue working throughout this pandemic and has been an invaluable tool in keeping parts of the economy going when others were effectively shut down. For certain sectors, for example the digital economy, this has had little impact on productivity, with indeed some reporting an increase of productivity, and has demonstrated the resilience of the sector, now clearly a really good selling point for InvestNI as they talk to companies interested in coming to Northern Ireland. One of the impacts of remote working could include the wider regional redistribution of some office worker spend by moving expenditure away from the area around the office to areas where workers live. However, sudden moves of large-scale economic activity from one place to another will bring benefits to some and hardships to others, which is why any such changes will usually be based on extensive planning and gradual implementation. COVID-19 has allowed us time for neither and has been quite a disruptor in this effect. Some commentators believe that these changing work practices are here to stay, with greater levels of flexibility for many on when and where they work. One should be cautious about predicting these things, though. And many of the businesses I speak to are already planning on returning to the office for a range of reasons, including the social side of work, the ability to enhance team working, and the informal engagement within workplaces, which all contribute to the way a business operates. This trend has had a dramatic impact in Belfast city centre, where footfall has dropped, and which in turn is having a severe impact on local cafes, coffee shops, restaurants and the wider retail sector, as well as on the number of people using public transport to move around the city. Whilst I am on record as saying that I would like to see people return to their office as soon as it is safe to do so, this will ultimately be a decision for each business to make themselves.
I'm going to call Sean Lynch, supplementary.
I want to thank the Minister for her answer, and she did mention the Belfast city centre and returning to work to boost the local economy. But in my own constituency, local and small businesses have seen a footfall in trading in numbers. Ask the Minister, will the Minister commission a report to identify how remote working can impact on local economies?
I ask to remind the Minister that there's 2 minutes to respond to your question. If you think you need more time, you can ask for an additional minute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I have recognised that at the moment what we are seeing, and my local town is also seeing it as well in Upper Bann, somewhat of a move from those people who would work in Belfast during the day and then are now working at home. And therefore the local economies are progressing and seeing some progress, again, in very difficult circumstances. We will be publishing an economic strategy, and as part of the research for that, it would be welcome to do some research into the impact of working from home, both on either side of the argument.
I call Joanne Bunting.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Minister for her answers, and I'm glad that she's well aware of the troubles that there are in Belfast City Centre as a result of the dramatic reduction in footfall. And on the basis of that, Mr Speaker, I would like to ask her, to the best of her knowledge, because I appreciate it's not necessarily her remit, but to the best of her knowledge, would she outline the current percentage of full-time civil servants still working from home? And does she agree with me that we have to learn to cope with COVID, and that it's time for the civil service to lead by example and return to their offices?
Can I thank the member for her question, it is no secret, in fact it was leaked to the papers, that I did write to the then head of the civil service to indicate that I thought that we should be looking at a phased and safe return to on-site duties for civil service staff. I think that that is important, and it is a reasonable thing where it is safe and possible to do so. I would have to say that response, maybe because it was the end of his period in office, was not that helpful in that respect. However, I will, when the new head of the civil service is appointed, take the matter up again. Can I say, just on a general note, this is about the balance that we will bring both to life and to the working environment. I don't think things will ever be the same again in a post-COVID world, but we will have to find that new balance and support city centres, which generally throughout the region are experiencing very difficult circumstances. And that will be also learning to live and work with COVID as a backdrop.
Thank you. Moving on, I'll call Cara Hunter.
Question 6, please.
Can I thank the member for her question? While my department is responsible for higher education policy in relation to teaching and research, as autonomous institutions, the universities are responsible for their own policies in relation to student accommodation. My department has no remit to intervene. It is clear, however, that universities will need to consider steps to ensure that young people are helped in relation to securing accommodation. Furthermore, universities need to ensure that clear information is developed with the Public Health Agency and communicated to students to ensure that accommodation is provided in a safe manner consistent with the current health guidelines. I am aware that universities do offer a limited number of accommodation places in any given year to students, and that off-campus accommodation is provided, albeit through private landlords. In this respect, the member may also wish to address her question directly either to the universities or indeed to the Department for Communities, which is responsible for private landlords and the legislation regarding houses of multiple occupation.
I call Cara Hunter, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answer. Speaking on the topic of university admissions, I have spoke recently at length with several Korean students, and this year's a little different for them. They will work predominantly more from home this semester over the internet and not in a lecture hall. In the Minister's opinion, do you believe that because of this educational new normal that there should be a reduce in university fees at this time?
I have spoken to the universities on this particular issue, and universities are assuring me that while lectures, because they are so large and it would be impossible to accommodate social distancing, while lectures will be online, the tutorials and other elements of student life and teaching will be available to students within the campus setup. It is not for me to comment on how universities organise this, except to say that my department will be monitoring this to ensure that not only do students get best value for money, but they get the best teaching that is available to them.
That ends the period for listed questions, and we will now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions, and I call on Mark Durkin.
I'm going to touch on a point made by my colleague there during normal question time. The Infrastructure Minister, Nicola Mallon, has confirmed that she will step up and help taxi drivers and bus operators when the Executive Office confer on her the powers to do so, all because of the Economy Minister's failure or reluctance to use her own powers to help them. What is the Minister's excuse for not doing her job and leaving these workers in the lurch for so long?
As I have said in my previous answer, and I revert to that as well, the Department for the Economy has provided a huge range of support to businesses right across Northern Ireland. Indeed, over £1/3 billion has been allocated through my department to help businesses in Northern Ireland. In fact, also including some local taxi firms who would have availed of rates relief or the hardship fund or indeed the 10K fund. So many of those firms have already been helped. However, it is also important that those departments that have regulatory responsibility step up and actually take on that responsibility and look at the areas where they can provide help. In the case of, for example, haulage, the Department of the Economy does not hold any of the stats or figures or any of the other information that would be needed to have a scheme for the haulage industry. The Department of Infrastructure holds all of those figures. Therefore, it would seem sensible that the Department of Infrastructure steps up and gets going with a scheme that will actually help the industry, which in the height and the depths of COVID kept food supplies running to Northern Ireland.
Mark Durgan, supplementary.
I thank the Minister for my answer. However, methinks the Minister doth protest too much. She has always had the power to intercede, but did nothing. You can't cherry-pick who you want to help. And I wonder, can the Minister tell the House if there are any other areas of her work that she's having difficulty fulfilling and she might be waiting for another Minister to come along and do for her?
I appreciate that the member is trying to spare his colleagues' blushes. So we will then move on from this. There are many areas of the economy that are suffering very, very deeply in this economic recession. And we will experience even more difficulties as we come to the end of the furlough scheme. That is why I published my economic recovery paper. That is why I have indicated that while we need to support those core elements of the economy, we also need to go out and grab new opportunities for Northern Ireland in the digital economy, in the green economy. Really important issues for Northern Ireland. It's time now that we actually got on with doing those things. And to that extent, over the last number of weeks, my department has submitted around 32 bids to the Minister for Finance, looking at interventions in the economy in a structured way that will allow our economy to grow and prosper and provide jobs for families in Northern Ireland.
I call Jerry Carroll.
Mr. Speaker, Minister, your department in January wrote that if you didn't give fracking licences to Tamboran and EHA, this would leave the department open to legal challenge. Can the Minister explain why that's the case, and would it, the same rationale mean that if I get refused planning permission for my house, I can sue as well?
Can I thank the member for his question? We are currently not exploring the issue of licensing. In fact, those licences that those applications, that are currently with us, we are looking at the responses. We are collating those responses, and we are currently doing some research into the overall topic. Be assured that this is a controversial and cross-cutting issue. This will be a matter for the whole executive and every party across this executive to give a view on it. And therefore, when the time comes, those recommendations, whatever they may be from the department, will go right across the executive for decision.
Jerry Carroll, supplementary.
I would respectfully disagree, Minister. I don't think fracking is controversial. It's crazy and it's dangerous to the environment, and it's been proven by multiple people. One of the asked the Minister as well, I think this is something I raised with her already, can she give a commitment to my constituents and many constituents across the north who are still waiting a decision around an application which would give a private company the right to drill for petroleum across the north, that she will not proceed with granting that licence?
I refer the member to my previous answer.
Moving on to Gemma Dolan.
Is the Minister concerned at the obvious confusion in Brexit preparations created by the UK Internal Market Bill introduced on the 9th of September, which the British Government has conceded is breach of international law?
Since taking office, my absolutely top priority in negotiations with our national government and in conversations with my executive colleagues is to make sure that Northern Ireland firms and Northern Ireland businesses have that unfettered access to the United Kingdom's internal market, our own internal market. That's hugely important because jobs and families and prosperity depend on that access to that market. And I therefore think that there are a number of things that we need to consider around the Internal Market Bill. Not just the idea of unfettered access, the idea of state aid. I don't want Northern Ireland firms to be encumbered and lumbered with EU state aid regulations and the rest of the United Kingdom to be able to move on in that direction. So there are many issues that concern me around the Internal Market Bill, but my top priority, my absolutely top priority for prosperity in Northern Ireland is to ensure that we can access that market in an unfettered way and that our firms do not suffer competitive disadvantage within that market.
Gemma Dolan, supplementary.
I thank the Minister for her answer. The Irish Protocol was put in place to protect the Good Friday Agreement and the economy in the north and across this island. The Withdrawal Agreement and Irish Protocol are the result of hard-fought and hard-won compromises. Is the Minister concerned that the British Secretary of State, Brandon Lewis, has stated that the IM Bill breaks international law?
It's no secret to the member, indeed all of the members in this House, that as a member of the European Parliament, I did not vote for the Withdrawal Agreement and I did not vote for the Northern Ireland Protocol. I see the Northern Ireland Protocol as being absolutely disastrous for the Northern Ireland economy. And I am concerned when I talk to firms across Northern Ireland, firms who are producing medicines, firms, agri-food firms, other manufacturing chains whose main market is within the United Kingdom. I am concerned that they have that access to our internal market that will make sure that they are able to compete both competitively and without disadvantage within that market. That means, and again I make no apology for repeating it, that unfettered access to that market is of the utmost importance to me, and that the operation of the protocol could be detrimental to that access. I don't understand why this House, wants so desperately at times to put up barriers between us and the biggest part of our marketplace. That would be disastrous for business and disastrous for families and incomes in Northern Ireland.
I call Rachel Woods.
Speaker, and back to the very important issue of fracking. With relation to the Petroleum Licence Exploration Application PLA 2-16 in Fermanagh, is a health impact assessment of the cumulative impacts of the full development of the Fermanagh Shale Basin across the life cycle of the project stipulated as part of the research process within the department?
Can I thank the member for her question? We are, as you know, currently doing research into the wider impacts. Health will be part of that research. And I look forward to sharing the research and indeed to maybe sitting down with the member and discussing these issues in further detail as we get towards a conclusion of the process.
Rachel Wood, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her answer. I'd be very happy to meet with the Minister. The Department claims that although the adverse effects on the environment and human health can be associated with shale gas production, but there is evidence in scientific literature to demonstrate how effective measures can mitigate the risks to reduce them to an acceptable level. Can the Minister outline how fracking can be regulated for with limited impact on public health?
We have no intentions for regulation in that direction at this minute in time. As I said before, I am happy to talk about the health implications of any and all of these processes with the member.
Call Palm Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I ask the Minister, in terms of the internal market bill which was discussed earlier there, does the Minister agree with me that anything that reduces friction in terms of trade with the rest of the UK is to be welcomed?
As I've said in this House many times, our biggest market is in GB. For our agri-food industry, 65–70% of everything we produce goes to market in Great Britain. Therefore, any frictions within that marketplace have potentially a detrimental impact on business and a competitive disadvantage to our businesses within the marketplace. We also need to remember about 2/3 of everything that we need for manufacturing, and that very, very important supply chain for manufacturing and from retail comes from the Great Britain market. It is therefore absolutely essential that we do not have frictions in that way either. I think that we should really focus on this as an issue and forget the politicking around it and ensure that our businesses have the ability to survive, compete and do well in what is our largest market.
We'll have a very brief supplementary from Palm Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister. And would the Minister also agree that not only should the NI Executive be working together to protect trade with our largest market in Great Britain, but they should also work to ensure Northern Ireland fully benefits from post-Brexit international trade deals signed off by Her Majesty's Government?
Absolutely. This is a hugely important area for Northern Ireland. I've been speaking to Greg Hands, the Minister at International Trade, to ensure that the Northern Ireland Protocol will not hinder Northern Ireland firms being able to be full parts of that internal of those trade bills. In order to really prosper and really to grow our economy, we have to look out towards other economies. It is therefore absolutely vital that we are able to be part of those trade bills, and I look forward to further discussions with Minister Hands and would actually like to see legislative underpinning in the trade bill of our part within it.
Could I call Alan Chambers, and could I say that you're unlikely to get time for a supplementary?
Could I ask the Minister what authority her department had to temporarily close down HMS Caroline as a visitor attraction, as there is no written agreement with the National Museum of the Royal Navy?
Can I thank the member for his question? And indeed, I actually just signed off a priority written question to the member just prior to coming down on this very issue. The member will be aware that the HMS Caroline issue arose because while we wanted to take the issues forward, we wanted to settle the issues with the Naval Museum, we also needed to do so on what was a sustainable footing going forward. However, they decided that they wanted to terminate that agreement, and that left us with little time to actually pursue a new operator for the HMS Caroline. But be under no illusion and be absolutely clear, let me be absolutely clear on this. I am committed to this very important piece of our heritage remaining in Northern Ireland, being open again and making sure that we can do everything to ensure that it's in a sustainable way going forward. And I would ask the member to join with me in that commitment.
That ends the period for topical questions, and time's up. Could I ask members just to take a raise for a moment or two, please?